Good morning, Room 219. So, today we are going to work on our social studies lesson. We are going to read Guns for General Washington, chapters 17 and 18, and then I'm going to send you a Google Doc to answer 2 questions. So, go ahead and get your book out so we can read it along together. Please use the book to help you with the questions as well as this video, okay? All right. So, hit pause if you need to get the book right now, but if you're ready to go, then let's begin. Chapter 17 is South to Claverack. South to Claverack. That's page 97. Will and his brother stood on the bank and stared at the river, which was choked with ice floes. William began to sing an old folk song. The water is wide, I cannot cross, and neither have I wings to fly. Build me a boat that carry two, and we shall row, my love and I. So, it's covered with ice floes. That's a good word, floes. Do you know what a floe is? Do you have an idea what an ice floe is? Well, think of ice. It's not as big as a glacier or an iceberg, but it's just big chunks of ice. So, is the river frozen, or does it have water with some ice in it? Yes, it has water and ice in it. So we're talking, here's the river, and you got chunks of ice flowing downstream. So how were these guys able to get across rivers before? What did they use? They used frozen rivers because that way they could cross it. They almost didn't make it the last time, but they did. So now, is this river frozen? No, it is not. So let's see what's going to happen. The colonel grunted and waved his hand. We'll need more than a boat to get across this mess. We'll need a whole fleet. Sometimes I think the weather gods have turned royalist on us. South of Albany, the convoy was at a halt again. According to plan, they were supposed to go back across the Hudson at this point. On the other side, they would pick up the old post road, a smooth route that would take them quickly to the town of Kinderhook. But their bad luck was continuing. A sudden thaw had set in, and the river ice had started to break up. So why was the ice no longer big chunks pretty much frozen over? Why was it broken up? There was a thaw. Do you know what a thaw is? That's when we get a unexpected heat wave, like the other day when we hit 70, but it was for a couple of days. So what happens when the weather gets hot with ice in a river? The ice starts to melt, right, and it breaks it up. So can they cross the Hudson like they were planning to? Just walk over it? No, they cannot. So let's continue. The troubles continue for the brothers. It was now a mass of huge floes moving sluggishly downstream. There was no solid place where the teamsters could cross, and there were no barges nearby. Not that they could have been much use on the ice-clogged river. So even if they had enough boats to get across, could they get across with all that broken ice in between? Because what I drew was a little bit, but there was a lot more. No, they can't. So boats wouldn't help either. So what do you think they might use instead? Or what might they have to do instead? Write in a comment and below. I wonder what you guys think. Hi, Monday. Monday's back. You want to see him again? All right, Monday, come here. Say hi to my students. He's starting to get a little shaggy. He needs a new haircut. What do you guys think? All right, Monday. Bye. He likes it when I teach. All right. Henry shook his head, staring at the ice floes that seemed to taunt him. For the first time since Lake George, he felt doubts about the plan. But he forced himself to sound confident. If we don't cross here, he said, we'll have to go miles out of the way, and we've lost too much time already. We'll stay put and pray for another freeze. So their plan is just to wait for it to freeze over again. It may work, it may not. Let's find out. Muttering to himself, he stomped over to the farmhouse serving as his headquarters. At the kitchen table, he sat down and wrote another letter to Lucy, whom he deeply missed. Then he sent a report to General Washington, which would go to Cambridge by courier. So what do you think a courier is if he's sending a letter? That's right, it's a mailman. In it, he wrote, "The want of snow detained us for some days, and now a cruel thaw hinders us from crossing the Hudson River. The first severe night make the ice sufficiently strong. Till that happens, the cannon and mortars must remain where they are, which pains me exceedingly." After 48 hours of impatient waiting, which kept JP and everyone else on edge, the freeze finally came. So they had to wait 48 hours. How long did they have to wait for? That's right, 2 days. The next morning, the river was solid, and the vehicles made their way slowly across the ice, going around the craggy floes that jutted up here and there. So they were able to get across again. Once on the old post road, the men moved along at a steady pace. They reached Kinderhook without mishap, though some of the horses were trail weary and had to be replaced. After resting here for a while, the train forded a shallow branch of the Moosic River and headed south to Claverack. So they forded a river. That's another great word. Let's talk about it. Where's my purple? Here it is. Let's keep the vocab in the same color. So they forded a river. Now, do you have an idea what it means to ford the river? Okay, if you have no idea, what it pretty much means is this river is not very deep, so they just went ahead and walked right across it. They could make it. It wasn't a very deep river, and so they could just go over it. No problem. Might have gotten a little water, maybe up to the wheels or the wagon, but nothing major. Something that was pretty easy to get past. Okay? All right. For a while, the travelers had better luck. They reached town by nightfall, and again, the whole community turned out to greet them. Colonel Knox was cheered. Pleased with their progress, it had been their best day yet. He was looking forward to an early morning start. Suddenly, there was a loud cracking noise. A sled hauling the 18-pounder had been weakened by the journey, and it collapsed in a shower of splinters and broken wood. So what happened to the sled? It broke! It was just broke there because of all the weight it had been carrying for this whole journey. More bad luck. Henry and Will inspected the wreckage unhappily. Nobody had been hurt, but the vehicle looked like it had been smashed by a giant hammer. "We haven't any spare sleds," Henry sighed, "and the gun's too big to put on another load. We'll have to build a new sled, extra strong." The colonel's plan wasn't as simple as he thought. First, the right hardwood trees had to be located. Then they had to be cut down and sawed into planks and runners. Next, they had to find a local blacksmith to forge iron rims for the runners and bolt them in place. And finally, metal rings had to be attached to hold the harnesses. Henry growled over the delay. It took 2 full days to build and load the new vehicle. Then at last, he gave the signal and they started on their way. So, according to what we've read so far, they had to wait 2 days for the thaw, and then they had to wait another 2 days to build a new sled. So we're talking about a week now. 4 to 7 days, because we don't know how many days in between. But I think 4 is fair enough. Leaving Claverack and the Hudson Valley behind, the caravan crossed into Massachusetts. Ahead, Whoops, my laptop turned off. Give me a second. Ahead lay the roughest part of the trip, the Berkshire mountain range. So they still have a mountain to cross. Here, the tired men would face 100 miles of wild country, steep hills and deep ravines, treacherous gorges, and streams filled with jagged rocks. For most of the way, there were obviously no roads or trails, not even crude footpaths. As they pushed on to Great Barrington, Will studied the looming hills. He felt nervous and worried. The caravan was way behind schedule, and now they faced their biggest challenge. Some instinct told the young soldier that these high Rocky Mountains, and not the British, were going to be their worst enemy. So that's the end of chapter 17. Let's go on to chapter 18 then, okay? So we're going to read A Walk in the Rain, okay? It was drizzling in Boston, a thin rain, more like cold mist. The two companions walked down Beacon Street, their jacket collars turned up, their shoulders hunched against the wetness. Nearby, on Common, a company of soggy redcoats were going half-heartedly through a drill. The walkers stopped to watch. "They're a sorry-looking lot," Paul Jr. whispered. Old Toby grunted. "Part of Howe's reinforcements. 3 troop ships came in yesterday from England, with a whole parcel of new soldiers." So, reinforcements finally made it, but for who first? The colonists or for the British? The British, right, because the cannons are still stuck up there in the mountains. Oof, let's see what goes on. Old Toby grunted. Oh, I already read that. Paul frowned. "I was afraid of it. I saw the ships anchored off Hudson Point this morning." The old boatman spat on the muddy road. "There be rumors," he said in his low voice, "that England's having trouble getting volunteers. Not many British lads are keen on sailing the ocean to fight us on our home ground. I hear tell that Bow Wow Howe's had to scrape the bottom of the barrel." So the nickname for Howe is Bow Wow Howe. Who do you think they're referring to when they say Bow Wow? Yeah, they're calling him a dog. Oh, some people may consider that an insult, but I don't. But maybe it is. Yeah, it is. Alright, let's continue. Paul studied the Marines, drilling carelessly. "Looks to me as if they're half-starved," Toby nodded. "Aye, it's the thin rations. But I'll tell you something, lad. Their cannons aren't going hungry. There's plenty of powder to feed them. And now it looks like the British have most as many fighting men as General Washington." The strollers, one young and vigorous, the other old and hobbling, went past John Hancock's mansion on the slope of Beacon Street Hill. Hancock, a rebel leader wanted by the British, was safe in Philadelphia. But one of Howe's aides, General Henry Clinton, was using the Hancock home as headquarters, so it had been spared destruction. So they're using someone else's house as their headquarters without permission, because of course, you remember, Hancock was one of the gentlemen who signed the Declaration of Independence. So this is a big deal. Well, it's an intrusion. The drizzle finally ended, and the walkers turned on Cornhill Street, where Henry Knox once had his bookshop. Near the old State House, they leaned against the mossy road, and the boatman lit his pipe. He looked up and down carefully, then leaned over to his young friend. "Look you, Master Paul, Washington's had another dispatch from Colonel Knox. Your friend Will and his cannons have gotten as far as Claverack." The boatman is really well informed about everything, isn't he? "I'd say that's nigh on halfway. Now they must come east over the mountains." Paul was excited at the news. I keep hoping and praying they'll reach Cambridge soon, he sighed. Do you think they'll make it? The old-timer squinted up at the clouded sky. Can't rightly say, but if they don't, Boston's done for. The city was gloomy and half deserted. A few people in drab clothing hurried by, their faces thin and pale. Paul tried to shift to a cheerier note. Toby, I had a mind to ask you, what does the new flag look like? The boatman's old face crinkled into a smile. The Grand Union flag? She's mortal fine, lad. I was right there when General Washington raised her for the first time. She got red and white stripes, 13 of them, one for each colony. And in the upper corner, the canton, they calls it. There's a small Union Jack for old time's sake. The veteran shook his head over it with wonder. I'll tell you, son, it's powerful good to see our own flag flying in the breeze over Cambridge. Paul looked around the sad gray city. You think, he asked wistfully, we'll ever see it flying here over Boston? Toby trudged away, chewing moodily in his pipe, and gave no answer. So those are the 2 chapters for today. I want you to go ahead and go onto the Google Doc and answer the 2 questions that I'm sending you, okay? And thank you and have a great day. And I want this by today, okay? So that way we're not doing makeup work. All right. Bye, and I'll see you guys around, okay?